During World War II, while the skies over Europe raged with fighter planes and bombers, a secret squadron took flight under the cover of darkness. The Germans feared them so deeply that they believed these pilots were not even human. They called them Nachthexen, the night witches. But these mysterious pilots were not ghosts, nor were they supernatural. They were young Soviet women, many still teenagers, who flew into battle with almost no equipment, no defenses, and no fear. The story of the night witches begins in 1941, when Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, the largest military invasion in history, against the Soviet Union, as the Red Army struggled to push back the German assault. A Soviet woman named Marina Raskova, a famous aviator often called the Russian Amelia Earhart, persuaded Stalin to form all-female combat aviation units. It was a bold move. While women had served in support roles, few countries believed they could handle frontline combat, especially flying missions at night behind enemy lines. But Stalin approved the idea, and 3 all-women regiments were created. The most famous was the 588th Night Bomber Regiment. These young women, some as young as 17, came from all over the Soviet Union. Many had never even seen an airplane up close. Yet within months, they were trained, uniformed, and ready for war. The equipment they received, however, was almost unbelievable. Instead of modern fighter planes, the night witches flew outdated, slow, flimsy biplanes made of canvas and wood. These planes, originally designed for crop dusting and training, could barely carry 2 people. They had almost no instruments, no radios, and no armor. A single bullet could easily tear through them. But what seemed like a disadvantage soon became their greatest weapon. The biplanes were light, silent, and able to fly extremely low. The Germans' radar systems had trouble detecting them. Their engines were so quiet that the night witches could drift through the air almost soundlessly. Before dropping their bombs, they would cut their engines and glide over German positions. German soldiers later said the only sound they heard before the explosion was a faint whooshing, like the noise of a broom sweeping. That eerie sound, drifting through the darkness, made the Germans believe the Soviets were sending witches on broomsticks. The night witches flew their missions in every condition: snow, rain, wind, fog, because the war demanded it. They flew without parachutes because their planes were often too overloaded to carry them. Their uniforms were hand-me-downs from male soldiers, oversized and awkward. Their lives were a constant balance between courage and survival. A typical mission was terrifying. The women took off in groups of 3. The first plane acted as bait, drawing German searchlights and anti-aircraft fire. The second plane used the distraction to approach the target. The third plane swooped in silently, engine cut, releasing the bombs with deadly accuracy. Then the roles rotated again and again until all planes had dropped their payloads. On some nights, each pilot flew up to 18 missions. They returned to base exhausted, freezing, and often covered in oil, dust, and soot. Yet they went back up night after night, determined to push the German army back. Over the course of the war, they carried out more than 24,000 missions, dropping over 3,000 tons of bombs. The Germans were both terrified and frustrated. Because the biplanes were so slow, German fighter pilots struggled to shoot them down without overshooting. One German ace joked that shooting down a night witch was like shooting down a bicycle. But their slow speed also made them vulnerable. Dozens of women were killed in combat, and many others were wounded. Still, the regiment fought to the very end of the war. The night witches' bravery did not go unnoticed. They became legends across the Soviet Union. Their commander, Yevdokia Bershanskaya, led the regiment with discipline and strategic brilliance. Pilots like Nadezhda Popova, Yevgenia Rudneva, and Irina Sabrova flew hundreds of missions, often returning with their planes riddled with bullet holes. Irina Sabrova became one of the most decorated pilots of the war, completing more than 1,000 sorties. The women formed deep bonds with one another. They shared everything: fear, exhaustion, and triumph. They celebrated small victories, mourned their losses, and protected each other fiercely. They painted their lips red before missions to boost morale. They joked that if they were going to die, they would do it proudly, with lipstick on and courage in their hearts. The night witches represented something larger than warfare. They showed that courage has no gender. They proved that determination can overcome even the harshest limitations. They fought not just against the Germans, but against stereotypes and prejudice. Even after the war, many of the surviving women were denied recognition, because male veterans could not accept that a group of young women had accomplished so much. But history remembers. Today, the night witches stand as symbols of bravery, resilience, and the power of the human spirit. They flew in the darkness, carrying hope for their homeland and fear for their enemies. They are remembered as some of the most skilled and daring pilots of the entire war. The night witches did not fly for glory. They flew because their country was burning, and someone had to rise into the sky to fight for it. Their missions were dangerous, their planes were fragile, and their lives were constantly at risk. But they never backed down. They soared through the night with dignity, discipline, and incredible courage. The legend of the night witches endures because it is more than a story of war. It is a story of human strength, of women refusing to be underestimated, and of warriors who transform their weakness into power. The Germans feared them, their allies admired them, and history honors them. The night witches earned their name and their place among the most extraordinary pilots who ever lived.